we'll look into virtual DOM, which is the mechanism through which Vue.js renders the UI. It shows the UI that we ask it to show, and how it updates the UI. So when some data changes, uh, what a part of the steps that it undergoes to update the UI. That's the virtual DOM. It's the underlying architecture for Vue.js. It is inspired from React. If you're unaware of how virtual DOM works in React, it's pretty much the same. So let's take an example to understand how the virtual DOM mechanism works for rendering UI and updating the UI. We'll take a copy of this template. We're going to see virtual DOM. So we'll be showing a list in this example. It'll be a list of fruits. And then we will have a form where we'll be typing out the name of a new fruit and try to add to this list. We'll add it in two ways. We'll add it to the beginning of the list, so as the first item, and we'll also add in another way, we'll add it as the last item instead. So one of these ways we'll be adopting. And we'll see how the virtual DOM mechanism, and we had just seen key, right, when we're going through this, how the key really works and helps improve performance, that is reduce the render time in lists, especially large lists, when you add some items at the beginning especially. So let's get into this. So we have a list of fruits. We'll have that in the data. It's going to be an array. We'll have an ID because we'll be setting this as the key. So this is the stable part of the item in the array. So ID1. And the name of the fruit. Okay. So we'll also add the methods to add to this list. Run the methods. We'll have the method add fruit at the beginning. We'll have a form to take in the name of the fruit, and we'll be adding an object before this one if we call this. So we'll add it as a first item. So in JavaScript, you can add an item at the beginning of an array using unshift. So the array, so we'll say this dot fruits, basically you're accessing this data item. But remember, you have to use this dot in the methods. Dot unshift. And we'll add the a new fruit. So we'll give the ID, but we should give the ID for the first thing that we add to 4, because the ID should be unique, right? So we'll keep a data property, next ID, which will set to 4. Also, we need to know the name of the fruit. Right, so create a name property. And through a form, we'll be attaching this through the vModel directive so that what we type in the form will be stored here. So ID will be next ID. We'll start next ID. And the fruit name would come from this variable name. So either you can say name colon name, or if in JavaScript your key and value have the same identifier, like here name, and the value is being set from, okay, this dot name it should be. So we can't do that here. So what I was trying to say is if they have the same identifier like this, then you can actually shorten it to this form in ES 2015 onwards. But yeah, for us it is this dot name. I again made the mistake. Data property you have to access using this dot. So you can't use that shortcut. So we add the fruit, and then we know for the next fruit, we have to set next ID to 5, right? So we will call, we'll increment this next ID, and name will set it back to empty. If you're using V model and tying this up to an input, this step would also, sorry, again, this dot name equal to equal to empty. So this step would also clear out the field, because we know it's two-way data binding. If you change the value of the input, the if you change the value of the associated data, like V model associated data, the input will get cleared actually in this case, because we're setting it to empty string. So it depends on the value of the data in the input also. Similarly, we'll set up one function to add at the end, add fruit at the end. So we need this, add it as the last item. We can use push, just the push method, array push method. All right, great. So we have this, and now what we'll do is we'll add a form here. So let's say list of fruits. And then we'll have showing the fruits. We know how to do that. So we'll actually iterate through. In this way, we'll show the list of fruits. So we'll have a div. We can also use a more semantic way of doing it with UL. And we can say li. In fact, we can use class list group and list group item. They'll show a nice box for every list item. So what we need to do, we need to iterate through and create multiple LIs, right? Other only this like this. One for each list item. So we'll use V for. We don't want the index this time, so we'll just say fruit in fruits. That's the data number of fruits. So fruit in fruits, and show the name of the fruit. So fruit dot name. So it'll iterate and show. Let's see so far. It's a mistake. Fruit is not defined. Okay, there's one line. It's on this line. That's the internal part, so I can't see it. But fruit is not defined. So here you're told fruits and fruits, my bad. So fruit and fruits, and then you can use the fruit, which refers to one item in the array, the list. All right, so this is a list group basically in Bootstrap. So we are showing this, but we want to add, so we need a form to add. Right? So we'll have an h2, add a new fruit. So we have a form. And we will be calling one of these, this or this. Let's start with add a fruit at the beginning. So on submit, and we want to prevent the default action. We don't want the browser to submit this to some page. We'll call add fruit at the beginning. Okay. So this form is enough because we don't want to pass any extra arguments. The event argument will be passed to this, but we're not even using the event object. That's okay. Sorry, I have to set it up here. All right, and then we'll have the input. I'm not going to give a label and all. We'll say input. Of course, we should in general. That's a good practice, but I'll say input type equal to text, and v model is what we are mainly interested in adding here. So then what we type in the input should get stored in the name data. We say v model equal to name. Just to apply something we have learned, we can also say trim. We don't want the leading and trailing spaces. So it will be trimmed if some spaces are there in the beginning or at the end now. So this thing. And we need a button. Right? Also, we can give a placeholder because we're not giving a label. At least user will know what to type. The placeholder is using usually some help text, an example of what you're trying to enter here. So fruit name is to be entered. So we'll say maybe strawberries. We can see so far how it looks. We'll refresh and we can see there's add fruit and this thing. We can also add some classes. So we can add the class, so make it more clear. Just align the attributes. So we can use, let's say, class form control. So look much better. So you can see it looks much better. We'll add some space above this add any fruit. So in this part, we'll just add some margins above, a little bit below. So MT and MB2, margin bottom and margin top. Okay, that looks fine. Maybe just a bit more. I think that's fine. Okay. So now as we type, it will get stored in that data variable name. But we want to run that add fruit when we submit it. So either way, any way you want, like key up event you can handle and enter key up dot enter at the rate key up dot enter, or we can have a button. Generally, I prefer a button. So input or button, type button. This is class. Submit, my bad, not button. Button type submit. By default, it's a submit button. If the button exists within a form like this, it's within a form, this button. So class btn small button and btn primary color, primary theme button. All right, and it's not a self-closing tag. It's a slash button, and you give the value or the name of the button. So add a float, add float. Okay, now our thing is fully functional. So when we click on this button, the submit event will be fired on the form, and it's going to call this function. Right? It'll add it to the list, and rest we just need to do the data manipulation. In this case, the array we are adding an item. Rest Vue.js will take care. It's going to re-render, revalidate the UI, show the new UI. So let's say, okay, I'll add some space before that here. Just a bit of spaces above this button. Margin top 3. Okay, so pineapple. So the placeholder is just a hint text. It's not the actual value. So you need to type. So add fruit, and you can see it's added here. We could also add it at the end. So we could instead call add fruit at the end. That of course adds the fruit through push, which adds it as a last item instead. So we'll see the difference. Here pineapples is added at the beginning. Now with the change in the method, we say pineapples add, it adds it at the end. Okay, so why did we do this? Let's see. So let's understand a bit about how Vue.js works. Now we have not given a key, right? It's a good practice to give key, but here we have not given key, colon key, some root.id or whatever. They're not done that. So what happens if we don't give a key? Let's see, and then we'll see what happens when you give a key. So first of all, we need to understand how Vue manages updates. In this case, where we add at the beginning, first like we did here, add at the beginning, add at the beginning, like we added at the beginning. So how did Vue manage this update? Did it do some processing? Did it do DOM manipulation directly? So Vue actually maintains how the UI looks at any point in time. It doesn't probe the DOM to know this. What Vue does is, if you're saying this is what is to be shown, it maintains some kind of data structure called the virtual DOM. It's very similar to the actual DOM. A Vue doesn't consult the DOM. Let's imagine it's a copy of the DOM. So it maintains the structure internally in some object. That's called virtual DOM. So it maintains it, okay, this is the top div, there's a div class container. Within that, there's a h1, hr. It doesn't need to check, select an element in the DOM and check. It maintains this, how the UI looks in the DOM, how the DOM looks at any point in time. So that's why it's called virtual DOM, not the real DOM. It's like a copy of how it looks. So Vue knows that if you look at this part, which is the changing part in the page, that's the part that changes, right? Updates. If you look at this part, this V for, this is the part that changes really, these LIs, list items. Even this UL remains the same actually. So other parts it checks. So when it knows that it needs to update the UI, for example, when you call add fruit at the beginning, when you call this on submit, it looks at these and it sees that these parts, it looks at the virtual DOM, not the real DOM. It knows what elements are there. So it starts with the outermost element. If that is the same, it doesn't do any DOM manipulation on that element. Then it comes to its children, that is these elements. Again, it looks from the beginning. So H1 remains the same as before, right? When it has to update the UI. HR remains the same. We are not changing anything there. UL remains the same. And so on. It checks all these. Then it goes further inside. I'm not sure whether it does a depth first search or a breadth first search, but it look at the children, each of them. So here it notices that currently the view it maintains, the virtual DOM, actually has 3 elements. And now when you add a fruit, it's 4 elements. And how does it look like? It's basically pineapples, apples, oranges, bananas. So earlier it was just apples, oranges, bananas. So let me put it in here. Earlier it was apples, oranges, bananas, like LI apples, oranges, bananas. And before, this is when adding at the end. Add at the beginning. Add at the beginning. So now it is after adding, add at the beginning. So how will it look like? There's pineapples. Now again, Vue follows the same principle. This is a virtual DOM, and it sees as this is how the new virtual DOM or the updated DOM should look like. So it maintains how the virtual DOM looks like at any point. And that's why before update, it knows that it's like this, and after it should look like this. It has this view when you're trying to update any data. So it looks at these elements one by one, starting from the first one. So Li. So no, nothing needs to change. It's an Li element only, no DOM manipulation. But then it looks at the content. That is the children. It's a text child. This is apples and this is pineapples. So although it maintains a lie, what it will do is it will change this apple's text to pineapples. So it's a text DOM manipulation. Right? It will maybe set a text content or whatever within. Similarly, these are also DOM manipulations. Why? Because the item here is orange, but the second item here is apples. So this is oranges to apples, text manipulation again. And similarly, this is the third item is bananas, and now the third item is oranges. So it's basically bananas to oranges. Again DOM manipulation. Right? So there are 3 text DOM manipulations, and of course there's no fourth thing, so it has to add a new li. So it will create a new li, which is a DOM manipulation, adding a new element with the text again of bananas this time. New DOM node with text bananas. Now, how many DOM manipulations has it done? 4. Text, text, text. Okay, let me be clear. Text, text, text. And this is one new node it has created. So there are 4 DOM manipulations. Can Vue do better? Okay. So suppose you give a key. Suppose we give a key, like we should. It's a good practice. So when we're having this v4, we also give a key, which is anything unique and stable, something that doesn't change in the item, which is the item's ID. Once it's set, it'll never be changed. We don't want to do that. That's what ID generally is in a record. Item.id or fruit.id member. Then how does it do this DOM manipulations? When you give the key with the story changes. So with the key, what happens? So let's see the before and after. Before is of course the same. Okay, so with a key, this is without a key, what you're saying first, without a key. With a key, the story is going to change. So right now you have a key. So imagine that the key is added in the DOM, is not, it is maintained in the virtual DOM. So key is 1 for this, key is 2, and key is 3. Right. So here key is 4. Remember the first thing we're adding, next ID is 4. First thing we're adding because 3 have been occupied, 1, 2, 3. So key equal to 4, key equal to 1, 2, 3. So this is being maintained in the virtual DOM, of course. There's no key attribute for DOM nodes. Now what Vue does, it looks at the first and it looks at the second, but it doesn't actually look like that. So how it compares is, it checks for an element with a matching key. What I mean is here, key equal to 1. It doesn't actually compare it against this. It will compare it against the element with key equal to 1. Now that's why it should be stable. It should not change. Apples will always have the ID is being used, and the ID will always be the same for that item. Even after you add pineapple through some manipulation, here you'll be adding pineapple. The key for apple will remain the same, right? The key for apple will remain the same. That's the second item now. So Vue will know that it has to compare. Vue will compare the items which have the same key. So it will compare this with not the first one here, but the second. It searches through the keys. And it does it efficiently, not to worry about whether it's going to take time to find the one with the right key, whatever it uses, maybe a hash map or something like that, I don't know, but it'll do that efficiently as well, quickly. So it will see that the text within that remains the same, apples, apples. Therefore, it has to do no DOM manipulation. So the first DOM node, first DOM li, that is the first child of the UL, will be maintained now as a second child. Similarly, you will see that oranges, this key equal to 2, the text hasn't changed, so no DOM manipulation to be done. There's also no DOM manipulation to be done. It compares using the keys. So what will it do? It will actually create a new DOM node for this and put that at the beginning of the UL as the first child of the UL. This is the only DOM manipulation, and it is basically adding a new DOM node, like what it did for this one earlier. Right? So it will not create anything here actually. Compares by key and thus it finds no change, no DOM manipulation, no DOM manipulation, no DOM manipulation. So the good thing is only one DOM manipulation is done. Only one DOM manipulation is done. That is for this one. Create a new thing with text pineapple, right, and it's actually at the beginning, right, and none later, right? So here it was different. It created one for bananas. Here it's actually for pineapples. So that's how it is efficient. With a key, now it has to do only one DOM manipulation. Without a key, it did 4 DOM manipulations. 3 text DOM manipulations and 1 new DOM node with bananas. Now 1 new DOM node with pineapples. Think about what would happen if you add at the end. Would a key really help? Actually, no, you'll see. But you don't know where something would get added in the DOM. It could be at the beginning, end, or anywhere in between, right? So depending on where you added, the key would help that much during the updates to the UI. It's as close to the top if you add something, it'll be more useful, right? But you should always have a key. You don't know where it'll get added. So that's how virtual DOM mechanism works. And renders, re-renders, that is updates to the UI are made efficient by minimizing the number of DOM nodes. All these frameworks like Vue, React, and Angular, they manage the DOM manipulations for us. And when the data changes, they do it efficiently, the DOM manipulations. This is what makes all of these frameworks very efficient. Although Angular has a slightly different approach, it doesn't use virtual DOM, but still the DOM manipulations are managed in an efficient way in all these frameworks, including Vue.